Turn up the dive, feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's so I remember I share and subscribe. Join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, monsters, and welcome to this week's episode of Monsters on the Edge on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, Barnaby Jones, and we have got an awesome show here for you today. Before we get started with that, I wanted to let everybody know, because there's some stuff in today's show, not necessarily controversial or anything like that, but there are certain people out there who have an aversion to certain entities. And today's episode is going to be about some tribal and native legends and lore and creatures of that mythology. So just want to put that out there, because there are some people who don't like talking about it, hearing about it, or the names of those creatures because of things that they invoke. So before we get to our show today, I want to make sure that we throw that out there so that you get an opportunity to tune in, tune off, or get excited for today's guest. All right, guys, today my guest is Ryan Paul Tremblay. Ryan is a cryptozoologist, researcher, and folklorist. While his studies tend to focus more on the Wendigo, and here's the word I'm going to screw up a million times, Yee Naaldlooshii and Dogman, he is well versed in the more obscure takes on Sasquatch. He is currently working on a duo of books. The first is detailing the rich and illusions. Oh my gosh, I can never read these. Illustrious History of the Wendigo. The second, the follow-up, will focus on the lore and oral traditions behind the Yee Naaldlooshii. While he may come off as a doubter or skeptic to some, he likes to... I am so sorry. I can never read these in the morning, and I proofread them and all kinds of stuff. And he may come off as a skeptic to some. He, like so many others, is an experiencer. Years ago, he encountered a hyena-like creature that may categorize that. See, I can never read these. That many categorize as a dogman. He had paranormal experiences as well. It's his belief that a healthy dose of skepticism is needed in the fields of cryptozoology and the paranormal. It may not be a popular method, but he approaches all of these topics with critical thinking. You can hear his take and opinions on a wide variety of topics, ranging from the black-eyed children to devil monkeys to Goatman, on numerous shows. And he is also a huge monster and kaiju fan. At least I got that right. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, please welcome to the show, Ryan Paul Tremblay. Hello, sir.
How's it going, man? You had a hard time with that one, huh?
Well, there's some that are very technical, with a lot of like anthropological names and sciences and stuff. And those I can get through fine. It's the normal ones that I just cannot. And I rewrite them so that they're like simpler and easier to say, and it just never works. So
that's okay.
I gave up on mine last week. I'm just going to introduce him. Welcome to the show. Because
just be like, tell everybody about yourself.
Yeah, tell everybody about yourself. So awesome. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. I'm super excited to have you on. We've had so many Bigfoot guests and stuff, and I'm just excited for all the different things that you bring to the table. So
thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited. I follow a lot of your stuff on Facebook, and you're a very, like your intro says, like very down to earth, very scientific instead of all this stuff, and I love that's what I love about this research and the folklore and the history and stuff as well. So I will let you kind of take where you want to go with this. What is the topic that you want to talk about on this stuff?
We can start with skinwalkers or the Wendigo. I mean, it's really up to you. I like to have, just free rolling, whatever you want to talk about,
Absolutely. I know that some of your recent posts were talking about the Yee Naaldlooshii.
Yeah.
And your opinions and stuff on that, and how there's a lot of people like to throw that name and that entity around the country in different locations and stuff. And you're very passionate about that. So I think I would like to start with that and kind of talk about the lore and that, to kind of get some of the stigma and stuff out of there.
Okay. Well, I mean, I started doing that because I started noticing that like everything was becoming a skinwalker. Like you would see videos on TikTok and Instagram of goats of all things. And they're like, oh, well, it's a skinwalker if you look at the eyes. And I think people really need to take a look at actual goats and see that their pupils are very odd, okay? It doesn't mean that they're a skinwalker. There's a very specific method behind a skinwalker. So is a skinwalker going to turn into a goat and walk up to your door and ring your doorbell? No, it's something that always has a very distinct purpose to it. And I think people need to start really looking into this before we just take the Navajo belief and start throwing it around like it's nothing. It's not respectful to do, and it's insulting to the tribes.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. That's one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on to talk about this stuff. So can you tell us a little bit about their actual beliefs and what these things are?
Yeah, the Yee Naaldlooshii, they're shaman. They're, the medical practitioners that they start out good. They learn the medicinal ways, the healing chants, and, the ceremonies to help their people. But what a Yee Naaldlooshii is, it's someone that you can almost compare it to a Jedi and a Sith in a weird way, if you're a geek like me. Okay, they start out good, but they learn about these darker powers, and they become more selfish and more greedy, and they realize, hey, if I learn these powers, I can do what I want to do, and nobody's going to stop me. So they usually have to follow a very, very particular method. They have to either kill or even sleep with somebody that's very close to them in their family. So that could be a mother, brother, sister, father. They actually have to murder them brutally. So it's one of those things that when they do this deed, there's no turning back. And from there, that's when they learn how to take the animal pelts, mostly predatory animals, coyotes, wolves, bears, because when you use a predatory animal in a Navajo religion, it's an insult to the actual good form of that religion, because predatory animals are held very sacred. So when they turn into a coyote or something, it's supposed to be like a blasphemy of sorts towards that religion. And they will cause chaos and strife and disorder amongst their own people just because they want to, because that's their purpose.
Wow. Now, some of the things in there that you're talking about, like how they become these creatures or entities, is very similar to the Wendigo as well. Can you kind of talk about that lore and legend?
In some ways, it's similar. In some ways, it varies greatly. Because with the Wendigo, it's usually when somebody, a man or a woman, has broken certain cultural taboos. Now, the most popular one is cannibalism. But the Algonquin, the Cree, and the Ojibwe even talk about curses. So somebody could be cursed to become a Wendigo. So if you upset like a shaman in the Algonquin tribe, if you really infuriated him, he could put this curse upon you where the Wendigo enters through your dreams. And through your dreams and your nightmares, the Wendigo starts to chisel away at your psyche and eventually possesses you so that one day you become the Wendigo.
Wow. Very interesting. Yeah, we've talked about the Wendigo and stuff before on my show with again, Chad Lewis. We were talking before the show here and that. And it's just fascinating stuff with these things. Is there any other tribe or First Nations people or anything that have other similar things like this besides the Wendigo and the Skinwalker creatures?
Yeah, the Cherokee have the Raven Mocker, and the Raven Mocker is supposed to be this kind of entity that when somebody's dying, the Raven Mocker sets its sights on this person so they can eat their heart. So there's some crossover there, some overlap of sorts, but not identical.
Very interesting. Yeah, you always hear about the two. So I have heard about the Raven Mocker before, but I guess I've never put that in the same boat with that. But that's a good point.
I kind of put them in the same boat, but I also put them in different boats though, because the way that they describe each one of them, all three of them, they're different on so many levels. So to put them all in the same category would really be unfair. It's unjust to do that. So I tend to study them as their separate entities.
Very good. Yeah, totally. They're kind of like the boogeyman characters of these people as well, I guess you want to say. So
yeah, every culture has a boogeyman. The Irish have it, the Scottish have it, we have them. Us Americans have them. So
wow, very cool. So when you talk about these different creatures, they're very localized. So do they? What am I trying to say? Do you think that they're talking about the same kind of entities? Like, how when we talk about Bigfoot, you talk about, you have a Bigfoot up in Wisconsin, and you have the grass man and stuff. Do you think that these things are kind of the same entity that just is different based on the tribe? Like they're describing a similar thing, or do you think that they're completely different?
I think they're completely different. If you look at like just the Skinwalker and the Wendigo alone, the origins and how one becomes that entity is so totally different. It's like the tribes have their own beliefs, so they're talking about different creatures / entities when they talk about Wendigo and Skinwalker and Raven Mocker.
Very good. A lot of the times when we talk about the Wendigo creatures, people also bring up the pale crawlers. Now, do you think that those things have you done research into the crawlers as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's some tribes that actually call them the people before the people. And what they believe they were a tribe of people that lost all civility. They retreated underground and into caves, and they just forsook all, elements of humanity at all. They didn't talk, they didn't interact with other people, and they become very feral and very savage. And I do think that's kind of tied to the Wendigo in a very strange sort of way. I think maybe some tribes did see the pale crawlers and they thought, oh, Wendigo, so they figured that Wendigo were around constantly because they were seeing the people before the people.
Interesting. That's a different take on it. So you think that maybe they were seeing these other beings and attributing the Wendigo to them because they were seeing them all the time.
Yeah, if you put yourself in their mindset way back when, before we even knew what any of these things were, if you were someone that believed in the Wendigo and you were out roaming the woods one day and you happen across a pale crawler and this thing's, snarling at you and it's giving chase and it's showing that it wants to eat you, you're going to think, oh, this is a Wendigo. Somebody became a Wendigo. So they could have easily tied those two together, I believe. That's just my opinion. I mean, I could be wrong, but I could see the similarities, yes.
Yeah, definitely. Now, obviously, we're talking about these more the pale crawler looking Wendigos and stuff. A lot of the times when you hear the depictions of the Wendigo, we picture this antlered being. When did that manifestation come in, and is that any kind of tribal being, or is that something that was more Hollywoodized or fictionalized there?
Actually, that started with Algernon Blackwood's book. And what happened there is when he depicted the Wendigo in his drawings, he showed what looked like antlers, right? But what they were supposed to be are branches, because the Algonquin will tell you that the Wendigo will use tree foliage, like the shrubbery, the branches, the leaves, as camouflage. So he depicted it as wearing branches on its head. And everybody thought that was supposed to be like a stag-headed, deer-headed kind of creature. And that just became cooler. That looks more ferocious. That looks more vicious than their actual depiction. So that's how that got carried away.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know which one is more scary, the emaciated being or the antlered creature. I think I'd rather run into the antlered one out in the woods, honestly.
Yeah, me too. I don't think I'd want to run into the actual Wendigo because I don't think I'd even survive that. But just looking at it alone, I think I'd have a heart attack right then and there.
Now, there's a lot of other things that go along with the Wendigo. Like people say if you hear certain sounds in the woods or something that a Wendigo's out there. Can you talk about a little bit about those kind of things?
Yeah, like the most well-known thing is the cry of the Wendigo. And usually this happens when someone's about to become possessed by a Wendigo or a Wendigo has been born. And it's supposed to be this high, shrill cry that's louder than a train's whistle. So when the tribes heard this, they would freak out because they knew this was the call of the Wendigo. It's heralding approach. It's letting you know it's coming. Now, there's some confusion, though, because people will say that it mimics your voice, it mimics baby sounds or whatever. Mimicry was never part of the original Algonquin lore. That was something that was actually added in later on with confusion from the Skinwalker.
So the Skinwalker creatures, entities, people, what would you classify them as?
I would say entities as far as Wendigo goes, and Skinwalkers, I gotta say maybe like interdimensional magical beings. I mean, they do believe that Skinwalkers can travel between worlds, so that would make them interdimensional. So yeah, the Wendigo's more, I'd say we call them demons. That's what I would say. Whereas the Skinwalker is more a magical being.
Okay. So the Skinwalkers have more of the crying baby kind of sound and stuff with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's an old saying too that the farther away a Skinwalker sounds, the closer to you it actually is. So it'll do this call where it's trying to fool you and deceive you by making you think that whatever it is out there, it's a great distance away when it's probably right behind you.
Wow. Now we hear a lot of the stories of people hearing the crying baby and the woman and stuff like that, along with the Bigfoot lore. Do you think that those are connected at all, or how so?
I don't think they're really connected. I think Bigfoot's smart enough where it learns how to mimic sounds that it hears, and it realizes, hey, if I do this sound, I get some attention, or if I do this sound, I scare them away. I think Bigfoot does that more of a defensive thing, whereas the Skinwalkers do it to bait you into them.
Interesting. All right. So now sticking with the Skinwalkers, we hear a lot of the times that these creatures are what the Dogman are, and that they're the same creatures and stuff. Can you kind of talk a little bit about why people think that and the why they're incorrect or correct?
Okay, well, I mean, if you look at that, I think people are misinterpreting the werewolf legends, the stuff that we see about werewolves in the movies, reading books. But when you actually look at the Navajo way of describing the Skinwalkers, they never said they become bipedal versions of the animals they turn into. They literally become the animal that they're wearing the pelt of. So say one becomes a coyote. Does he become a bipedal coyote? No, he becomes an actual coyote walking about on four legs. In fact, the name Yee Naaldlooshii means by all means on all fours he goes. So right there, that should be good enough for people to go, oh, wait a minute. They walk on all fours in animal form. They don't walk on two legs. And I think maybe when people blend the two, it just makes both the werewolves and Dogman and the Skinwalkers seem that much more frightening.
Absolutely. People always try and put put everything into one basket and try and
Mhm.
understand it. And it's like trying to explain one phenomenon with another, and it just doesn't work that way. You have to take them
Right.
into
Right.
um
And I'm always commenting on that. I'm sure you see my stuff on Facebook where I'm saying you can't answer one mystery with another. So you can't take, Dogman and drop it in with Skinwalker, go, oh, we got the answers. No, you don't. You have no answers at all. In fact, you just deviated from the path. So we can't do that. That's a big mistake that a lot of people make quite often. And we got to stop doing that.
Absolutely. So there are other tribes and other people that believe of different ways of transforming into these creatures.
Hmm.
I know, for instance, that we talked about the skinwalkers wearing pelts of these animals. There's
Hmm.
also a belief of like wearing a belt, and then you
Hmm.
have other creatures like the selkies that have like the seal pelts that they wear. And can you talk about
Yep.
some other different variations of that?
Oh, sure. I mean, if you look at that one werewolf case, I forgot the man's name, but he claimed he had a wolf belt given to him by the devil. And
Mhm.
when he wore this, he would become a werewolf. And he even claimed he killed kids while wearing this belt. So I think the whole thing of wearing an article of clothing or some kind of charm to transform, it's got that magical sense to it. So it's almost natural that every culture has some form or variation of that.
Do you think that that's what these dogman entities are, or do you think that they're their own kind of species?
I believe that they're their own kind. I think that Dogman, for the most part, has a very strong interdimensional slip to them. And that would explain why we don't find a body. We don't find the pups. We don't find the fur, the scat. We rarely see them eating. I don't think they really need to. I think they're flesh and blood when they come over to our plane. But wherever they're from, I think they can be whatever they want.
Very good. So I always wonder this. We hear a lot of the tribal and the First Nations people and stuff talk about Bigfoot and these
Hmm.
other entities, and I've never heard anybody, even some of the researchers that have worked with the people themselves. There's no dogman lore. Have you heard
No,
anything about the?
the closest I've ever come is possibly the Shunkawarakan.
Okay.
And this is like supposed to be a very large hyena-like kind of creature that was in the Nahanni Valley and places up in Canada. So other than that, I can't really think of anything that describes a dogman in particular. And I've spoken to a lot of different tribe members, and they've never had stories of dogman in the past. So it's kind of a mystery on its own, isn't it?
Mhm. It always bothers me, like
Me
you
too.
talk about Bigfoot and that how you have this possible Gigantopithecus and the other
Mhm.
hominids and stuff that we came up from and evolution and that, but you have this dogman entity, and I believe they exist, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I've never had any experience with one. We've gone looking, we've gone researching here in Wisconsin, which is the home of the Beast of Bray Road,
Yeah.
and we've been in its backyard on numerous accounts. I've talked to witnesses. I firmly believe that they exist, and people are seeing these creatures. They're different
Yeah.
than Bigfoot, but I don't have the evidence to back my own to say that I've seen anything or any evidence of the creatures. So
Hmm.
it bothers me that you have all these sightings and stuff and no fossil record, no any
Yeah.
living other creature that compares enough to say, well, that's what this is, or that's where it came from. So
Hmm.
have you come across anything in your research that would lead any more evidence?
No, and that's exactly why I was led to the whole interdimensional theory because, like you said, there's nothing in the fossil record. And unfortunately, when we look into that and you find there's nothing that would match up, you got to start thinking along other paths. I mean, maybe they're an animal that didn't start here, like maybe that other dimension is where they began. And that's why we don't have fossils of them because, they don't live here. They pop in from time to time, but they don't actually stay here. And, I've been out researching, I don't know how many times per year I've not seen another one, and that really kind of bugs me because when you see one the first time, you're kind of going, well, I saw something. What was
Mhm.
it that I saw? And you can hear from other people that they saw the same thing, and it kind of makes you feel a little bit better, but you kind of need to see it again too, so you can validate your own beliefs and validate what you saw.
Absolutely. And that's a very good segue because in your introduction, you talk about having seen one of these creatures. Can you tell us
Hmm.
where that was? Well, first of all, where are you at in the country? Like, where are you researching right now?
I'm in Southern Arizona.
Okay.
So,
Well,
that's where I had my encounter almost 3 years ago. I mean, I was house sitting for a friend. Him and his wife went out of town for a vacation, and being the friend that I was, I agreed to house sit for him. And I would do routine checkups. There'd be morning, afternoon, and a late night. And well, one late night when I was doing my final checkup for that day, there was a little surprise waiting for me in the backyard. And yeah, that's when I had my first encounter, and it's a story that still sticks with me to this day.
Well, please share if you're willing.
Okay, so as I was walking up his driveway, I noticed the coyotes around, because we have a whole bunch of coyotes that just run about freely and nobody really pays attention to them, but they sounded nervous. They didn't sound the same as they did every other night. They sounded really anxious, like there was something they were trying to run from or hide from. But I didn't pay much attention to it. I'm like, whatever, just get this done, go home. But as I'm walking into his backyard, because his path leads to the side of the house where he has a fence, and I was walking there, it was pitch black, and I could hear something like a low growl. And again, I thought it was the coyotes at first, so I again paid no attention. But as I'm working my way into his backyard, this growl is getting deeper and it's getting louder. And I thought, maybe it was a mountain lion, maybe a bear. We don't get bears too often in this area, but I'm like, possibly. But when I heard the growl again, I'm like, okay, this is somebody playing a joke on me. Somebody's playing a prank. And me only being 5'10", I'm trying to puff up like that little puffer fish and look bigger than I really am. So I'm like, hey, trying to scare away whoever it might be. Well, there's silence for maybe like 10 seconds after that. But then another growl happens. And this time I can feel the growl in my chest, like it's vibrating right through me. I can feel my bones rattling from this thing. So I'm going, what is this? What is out there? And as I walk all the way into the backyard, I see something in silhouette. Now, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, because you know how when you're looking at shadows, you see shadows upon shadows. And I thought I saw something kind of moving around out there. But I was like, all right, whatever. So again, I'm like, hey. And this time the growl came, and it was like right in front of me. And as I'm getting right into the backyard, the security lights kicked on. And as the lights went on, I noticed like an amber glow in the shadows. Two very round eyes that are just staring right at me with this really bright glow. And so I kind of, jolted back a little bit. Lo and behold, there's this hyena-like thing kind of crouched down, looking right at me. And in that moment, he sees me, I see him. Well, he stands up on two legs, and I hear the loud pop. And I'm just looking like, what am I even looking at? What is this thing? So my mind's racing. I don't know what this thing is. I don't know what it's going to do, but it's still staring at me. And suddenly it rushes forward, and it just stops on a dime. And it's staring right at me. Its head's tilting side to side. I can see the ears going up and down, and I can see the mouth going up and down. So I'm not moving. I'm rooted in place. I'm terrified. I'm like, okay, whatever you're going to do, you got me dead to rights. Not moving. So I'm not saying a word. I'm just trying to breathe as soft as I can. This thing keeps staring at me, and just like it seemed like an hour, but it wasn't that long until this thing started to move backwards. And it's keeping its eye on me as it's moving backwards. And then suddenly it just turns around, starts going down the riverbank. And in that moment, that's when I'm like, run. So I bolted up the stairs of my friend's house. I'm in his house. I'm locking every door. I'm bolting every window. I'm trying to find some kind of weapon, because it's my friend's house, so I don't know where he keeps his actual weapons. So I'm grabbing knives and everything, and I call him up on the phone. I'm like, hey, you forgot to tell me there's a hyena in your backyard. And of course, my friend's going, Ryan, we're in Arizona, man. What are you talking about, a hyena? There's no hyenas in Arizona. And next day when he came home, I showed him where I saw this thing. You could see scuff marks in the ground. You could see where this thing was standing. So there was something there that day.
That is terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, imagine being the guy that saw that.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm good. I have felt that bone rattling guttural growl.
Yeah, it was so deep too.
Yeah, it is a weird feeling. I think mine was Bigfoot, not
nice.
Dogman, but it was definitely. I know what you mean, but I've never seen anything like that. So
yeah, the only thing I can compare it to is, how when you're walking down the street or something and there's a car that has a really loud engine and they have that bass going, it kind of feels like that. You know how when a car passes you by, you can just feel the bass from that. It's just like kind of rattling your bones a little bit. That's what it felt like for me.
Like a drum in a marching band.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Accurate.
Very cool. Well, we got to take a really quick break here. I want to hear more details about this if you're willing to share. But
Oh,
we're going
absolutely.
to take a really quick break here. And guys, thank you guys all for watching. If you guys have any questions, we're going through a lot of stuff really fast here. But if you guys have any questions as we go here, feel free to put them in the comments. And we will be right back.
Show your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our shows, knowledgeable hosts, and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
All right, guys, we are back here on the Untold Radio Network. I want to thank everybody that's tuning in and all of our Super Chat members. It really helps us support our channel here and bring great programming and stuff here. So we are talking with Ryan Paul Tremblay here about all things Skinwalkers and Wendigo and Dogman and maybe Bigfoot if we get to that. And so you were telling us right before the break here about your experience with one of these hyena creatures down in Arizona.
Yes.
So
And
go ahead. Yeah.
oh, that was a big moment for me because ironically, I didn't believe in the Dogman phenomena. Before I had my encounter, I thought, a bipedal canine, that makes no sense. Now naturally I read the books by Linda Godfrey. I've heard different shows about Dogman, but I was still like, I don't know. So I think that was kind of the universe slapping me in the back of the head going, hey, Ryan, wake up. There's more to this world than you think. So yeah, from that day on, I was just like, okay, yeah, Dogman's a thing. Definitely a thing. Okay.
So we don't have any questions in the section. So I'm going to take this over because I have a lot. And I feel like anybody that's listening has probably the same questions I do. So first of all, when we're talking about these creatures, there are a couple different styles, as we say of the Dogman creatures. One is the werewolf type creature, one is the hyena,
Right.
and then we have like these Anubis type creatures as well. So my question is, what did you see on this thing that makes you say that it's the hyena type? What is it looking like to you?
It's the shape of the head. The shape of the head was very square, and the muzzle wasn't as long as you would see on like a wolf or a German Shepherd. It was kind of like a shortened snout, and the ears had more of a rounded point to them. They weren't the sharp ears that German Shepherds would have. So, and then I could actually see spots in certain areas, the little rosettes that hyenas have. Yeah, it had those, and it had the very slumped neck. You know how hyenas have those arched backs and the long necks? That's what this had. But he wasn't super muscular. Like you'll hear a lot of people talk about how they saw the werewolf type that are really buff, like Arnold Schwarzenegger. This one wasn't that big. I'd say, if anything, he was more like a lean basketball player.
Interesting. Yeah, it's very, very true. You don't. I haven't heard many hyena type reports. I mean, even in Linda's books, she doesn't talk about that. And thank you for bringing her up because big fan of Linda's work and stuff. So
Yeah, mine too.
we on that topic, I never got to meet her. I really regret that. I got to talk to her on the phone, and we were supposed to go out on an expedition with her, and she actually got sick that day and couldn't go. She had a cold, and I never got to meet her. So
that's a shame too. She was such a sweetheart, man. She was such a good lady.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about her. So okay, when we're talking about this creature that you saw, how big is it? Like how tall?
Well, I would estimate he was about 6, maybe 6.5 feet tall.
Okay.
When he really reared up and he was reaching up like that, it was like 6.5. He was probably about 1.5 feet taller than me. So he was pretty big. He was bigger than I was. So I wasn't about to risk anything with him. I'm just going, no.
How big was it? Okay, so just to clear this up again, you see this thing in the porch light, so it's fully illuminated, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
So how tall is it when it's on all fours?
On all fours, I'd say maybe like 4.5, maybe 5 feet, because it seemed like he was like his upper arms like this were kind of pushing him up, so he was almost kind of sitting like a dog. You know how when a dog's sitting down, they got like that. So yeah, but his arms were incredibly long though. I noticed that his arms went down past his knees, like his knuckles were almost dragging when he had his arms down to the side.
Okay. Yeah, the hyenas typically have that slanted back look anyway when they're standing, so it looks like they're kind of sitting no matter what. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so when you're seeing this thing standing, you say it reaches its arms up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it grabbed a branch. Like when it stood up, it was kind of grabbing a branch, almost like support, and it was just kind of like hanging loosely as it was, standing there. So it was holding that branch, and it had its head down.
Okay, what were its four paws? Were they more hand-like, or were they more like paws?
They were a little bit of both. They almost were like stubby fingers, not long fingers like we have, more like maybe raccoons, like raccoons' hands, where they weren't as long, but they still had the shape to it. But you could see the claws at the end.
Okay, very good. What color was it?
I would say like a caramel color or a light brown with a little bit of coffee colored mixed in, but he had the black where the spots.
Okay. Here's a question for you. Did you notice more than one in the encounter at that time?
No, I just saw the one. I mean, you got to remember, I was so fixated on what was in front of me. I made that mistake of having tunnel vision, because I had no idea what it was I was looking at. This was something that I'm like, what is this and why is it here and why is it looking at me? So I was so nervous and distraught from seeing this that I didn't bother to look around. I probably should have, I mean, that would have been the smart thing to do, but live and learn, right?
My last question then, I guess, on this, well, I have a million questions, but my last relevant question, I guess, is tail or no tail?
I didn't even notice any tail or anything like that. I think I was just so blown away and in shock from it that when it started to walk away, I didn't really even pay attention. Because you have to remember that when it turned to walk, that's when I was like, I'm out, and I was gone. So
yeah, I totally don't blame you. I don't blame you at all.
No. I mean, the minute it turned its back, once it took its sight off of me, that's when I was just like, okay, I got warp engines on my back, man. I cleared up the steps real quick. I was in the house, just locking every lock I could find and bolting the windows and going through his drawers trying to find a big enough knife.
Wow. Have you, since that encounter then, have you done a lot of research on this topic and everything. Have you come across any other people's sightings of these type creatures in your area?
Yeah, this is where you're really going to get a kick out of this, Barnaby. So I was actually doing research in a designated area. It was about maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles away from where I had my encounter. I like to kind of localize it because, if I had an encounter somewhere, let's look close by. And I spent weeks there, and it's a riverbed. So, there's cliffs on each side. There's river walls on each side that are very, very high. And I was walking down there one day, and I noticed that one whole section had been cleared out. So somebody kind of dug it out and made this big kind of lot in a way. And in the middle of the lot was this pedestal made of sand and mud and clay that had a silver platter on top of it. And on the silver platter were all these exotic fruits, kiwis and pineapples and, shredded coconut. And so I'm sitting there thinking, what are you feeding out here? I mean, that platform is about 5 feet tall. Javelinas can't get that. Coyotes can't get that. So I thought maybe birds. Okay. So I made it a point to come back every week. I would go back, and every week I went back, the fruits were replaced. So somebody was, making sure that these fruits were fresh. So I got the smart idea that I was going to write them a note. So I asked them, hey, what are you feeding out here? It's such a random area. What are you feeding? And I left it under the platter. I gave it a week. I went back, and underneath the platter where I had left my note was a drawing. And it was a drawing of the hyena thing that I had seen. It said, we're feeding these. There's more than one. Be careful. So that right there, I was like, somebody else had seen what I had seen, and they were feeding it. So whoever it was, they never came forward to say who they were, but they were actually obviously interacting with this thing. So that right there really got me excited. And I thought, all right, I can't get any better than this. Somebody else has encountered it. Well, I was walking home one day through that research area, and there was a guy who incidentally was a paranormal investigator, and he does stuff on YouTube. And he asked me, are you going that way? And I was like, well, yeah, that's the way I normally go. So he told me, don't go that way. I saw something just the other day that I was coming back to see if I could find evidence for. So now, mind you, I didn't tell him who I was. I didn't exchange my name to him. So I wanted to come off as a stranger. And I asked him, well, what did you see? And he's like, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I saw what looked like a hyena with a baby. So he too had seen the same thing that I did, but this time it had an infant with it. And he said that they were eating what he thought were like pineapples. So this family was taking the fruit from that stand and going somewhere else and eating it, and he had seen him eating it.
Wow. Well, there's a lot to unpack here. So they're feeding it fruit, which is very interesting because you do not. I mean, hyenas in Africa and the wild and stuff are more scavengers and you know, carnivores. I don't know a lot. I mean, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of animals. I'm guessing, like, I just don't know if they're omnivores, and it's just really interesting to look at this creature and see them, like you said, eating pineapples or something. I mean, that's
Well, I
that's a
mean, if you look at it this way, I mean, could they be eating fruit when the season is off? Because, you know, in Arizona, we do have animals that go into hibernation as well, you know, but during the summer and the spring, there's plenty of hares, there's plenty of rabbits, quails, roadrunners. We got buzzards, you know, there's deer that pass through, but that's most notably during the summer and spring. During the winter, you don't really see too much stuff. So maybe they learned, you know, hey, during the winter, we have to eat something else. And for known animals, if you really want to get, you know, detailed about it, the maned wolf actually needs a certain fruit for its system, because if it doesn't eat that particular fruit, it can get sick and die. So maybe these things, in a way, need fruit for something as well.
Lee Warner says canines eat some fruit too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people aren't aware hyenas are not canines.
Nope.
They're more related to big cats. It's weird, but it's true. That much I do know about them. So
that's why it kind of tripped me up, you know, because I'm thinking I saw a Dogman, but hyenas aren't canines. So how does this go about? How does that happen? It's kind of one of those little loopholes that you're going, well, wait a minute, though. If I saw a hyena-like thing, it's not even a canine. How can that be considered a Dogman? So what is this thing?
Now, I'm going to ask you this because, you know, we got to cover all our bases here. I've heard a lot of stories about these creatures being the Dogman and possibly this hyena man thing too, being genetic research by the government, like human and these animal hybrids. So do you have any military bases or government facilities around where you saw this thing?
Not really close by. No, the closest Air Force base would have been Davis Monthan, and that was in Tucson. So that was a good 60 plus miles away.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. Go ahead.
It would be a good distance. I mean, am I saying that these things couldn't travel that distance? No, absolutely not. They probably could. But, you know, to see just that one, you know, I mean, I don't know. I think if it was a government thing or a military experiment, I probably would have run into military guys at some point.
Good point. Possibly. I got to go back up here. I missed a few here that I was waiting on. Besides Wisconsin and Michigan, where else have Dogmen been seen?
Oh, goodness. Ohio, Washington, California,
Texas.
Mexico's big with them. I mean, they have supposedly the ones that chase the, you know, the immigrants through the desert in Mexico. God, trying to think where they're not seen. I think the easier question is, where are they not seen? They're basically everywhere, I guess. Best way to put that.
Have you done any research into overseas back in the Afghan, Iraq wars and stuff? Some of the people claim to have seen these big black dogs, not werewolf hyena creatures, but just large black quadrupedal canines.
Right, and that reminds you of the hellhound lore, you know, the hellhound mythology, because usually hellhounds are seen in places of war or violence or death. You know, that's why we see so many hellhounds in graveyards. So, I mean, could there be a correlation between those two? Yeah.
Lee would also like to know, did you leave another note to them and the person this is back to the fruit bowl thing. Did you leave another note, or have you had any interaction? Have you tried to contact them or anything?
I did leave another note, but I think once they left that drawing for me, they kind of felt like, you know, we don't want to interact too much because we don't want you to know who we are. I think maybe they thought I think they were crazy or whatever, but no, I never heard anything back, unfortunately. I wish I did. I would have loved to actually sit and speak with them and ask them, you know, are you trying to habituate these things? Or, you know, when was your first sighting of them? How did you meet them? You know, that kind of thing. That would have been super useful for me.
It's a pet that overgrew its kennel and they just let it go.
Right. Well, I mean,
It's
that
there.
might also explain why it didn't attack me, though. If it was used to human interaction, that would
Yeah.
actually explain why it wasn't super aggressive or hostile towards me, because it was used to humans. It just didn't know who I was. And I think maybe I surprised it as much as it surprised me.
That's true. Is there like out pet food or anything there?
No,
The
no,
house you're sitting at?
no, no. So I think what it was doing is it was maybe looking for the rabbits, because the rabbits made dens in the hills next to his house. And during October is when the baby rabbits are, just coming out of the hole. So I think, it was looking for the baby ones.
Wow. So I got to back up here and ask you a question that's been on my mind here. You see this thing, right? Okay, well, let me back up here.
Mhm.
Were you were obviously interested in these creatures prior to this, right?
Well, like Bigfoot and stuff like that, sure. But I didn't really believe in the Dogman thing, though. That was one thing that I just couldn't fathom, and I couldn't wrap my mind around it, So I was kind of a skeptic in a way, I guess you could say.
Okay. So this is just because it blows my mind. You see this thing, you have this
Mhm.
up close encounter. How close were you actually when this thing charged you?
Judging
Like,
from where I was standing, where we found the scuff marks, we were 15 feet away from each other.
Wow.
So
is-
that was incredibly close.
Yeah. So you have this full lit 15 foot away encounter. This thing is growling at you. It pretty much, like you said, has you to right.
Mhm.
And then you go out a mile away from where this happened and you still are doing research. What was going through your head? Like, you hear these stories of the hunters that have these encounters and they won't even go back in the woods. And I mean,
Right.
it would take me, well, first of all, it would take me quite a while to get myself back to that point where I'm like, no, I need answers. I'm going to go back after this.
Mhm.
For you, how long of a break was it between seeing this and then going back out looking for it? And what was going through your mind there?
It was months, to be honest with you. I was terrified to even take the trash out or go anywhere at night, because I was convinced, if I was going somewhere where it was dark, this thing was going to be there. So I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'll go out during the day, but once that sun starts to set, I'm not going anywhere. But, I started to realize, though, if I'm going to find answers, I'm not going to find them on, YouTube. I'm not going to find them in a book. I have to find them myself. I have to get the answers. I have to ask the right questions. And ultimately, I had to go out there and see if there was any signs of what this thing was. And so I convinced myself, it's time to just, put on the big boy pants and get back out there and see what you can find. And that's when I started going back whenever I could, going out as often as I could, hoping through some miracle I would see some glimpse of this thing again.
Have you had any evidence, audio, visual, footprints, hair sample, anything that would lead to?
No, I had vibes, though. I had feelings. Like when I went to certain areas, I had this overwhelming feeling that I was being watched, and it wasn't a good feeling. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, and my brain's going, okay, yeah, we got to get out of here. There's something out there. We don't see it, but it sees us. So let's leave. So that's what I had.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, man, I can't imagine. I can't imagine being that close to one of these things. Like I told you, I think it was during the show already that I had that. Well, I've had several encounters with these things. I've been up at Upper Michigan in this one area and felt the ground shake as one of the Bigfoots walked by. I didn't see
Yeah.
anything, but it just, I always wonder, I'm watching the footage back because we record everything, and I'm thinking, why didn't I just
Mhm.
walk, 20 feet away and I could have seen it? And it never occurred to me in that moment. And, it just boggles the mind of trying to wrap your head around what would you do if you actually saw one of these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And
just,
I think people underestimate that too. People really do underestimate what it's like to be that person in that moment. Because we're not really prepared to see these things. We might hear different YouTube shows or whatever, but it doesn't really give you that preparation. It doesn't give you that jolt of reality that you're going to get when you actually see one of these things firsthand. It's not something that you can just dismiss. It's not a common thing. It's not something that we're even really ready for mentally or emotionally sometimes.
I guess, like, what would you do if you came across one of these things again? Like, you're out there walking through this, you said that there
Question.
was like cliff sides on both sides of that river, right? So you're kind
Mhm.
of in this little, you're trapped down there. So let's
Yeah.
say you come around this tree or bush or something, and one's standing there. What do you think you're gonna do? And I
I
say
would hope
think
that I would
because yeah,
I would hope I would get one clear picture before running away. I would want just one clear shot, or maybe even like 10, 15 seconds of clear video, and then once I had that, make a quick exit and that's it. I mean, I don't know that I'd try to interact. I know some people are saying, oh, talk to it or, try to communicate with it. Yeah, but how though? What do you do? What do you say? Because if this
hello.
thing doesn't want you here, it's not going to be like, oh, well, hey, how are you doing? Good to see you. How are you, man? It's not going to be
Yeah.
like that. So.
Wow. Now, when you go out, what do you take with you? Do you take protection? Do you have a firearm or anything? Do you have cameras? Like we always,
Um,
all of our team members have GoPros, like on running
yeah,
24/7.
I would have a GoPro with me, and I have a knife. I don't like to carry firearms because I believe accidents can happen, and you never know who you're going to run into. The guy could be a jerk and steal your gun, But I bring my dog. My dog
Oh,
Duke. Actually, he's the best alarm I have because dogs, animals in general, will sense something long before any human does. So when I'm out there, I watch Duke's reaction. If he gets nervous about going into a certain area, or if he's acting jittery at all, I know, okay, it's time to go home. He's not feeling right, so I shouldn't be feeling right either. Time to move on.
I think that's an important point to make. People always say, well, if your dog starts freaking out or something, or if you're getting this feeling of being watched, well, why don't you stay there? Why don't you look? That's when something's going to happen.
Right.
And I've been in those situations, and you definitely feel there's something not right. Today is not the day.
Yes.
It'll be a different day. And
Yep.
you just have to look out, because if it's not today, you're not going to get a tomorrow. If
Right.
that's
And
not the situation you want to be in.
with people saying that something's going to happen, well, sure, something might happen, but that something that happens might not be good. So
Mhm.
if you stay in that area where you're getting a bad feeling, it could be something that you're going to get attacked by. You could get hurt. You have to listen to your gut instinct. That's what I tell people when they go out. Don't ignore that gut instinct. If you feel something is off, or if your dog is telling you something's off, don't ever blow that off. Don't just shrug it away. Make sure you pay very strong attention to that. And if your dog and you are feeling off, get on out of there. It's not worth it.
Yeah, and like you said, you came down there and you're wondering if they're feeding bears or cougars or
Mhm.
whatever you have, or no, that was when you were in the backyard. You're talking about what could this thing be, and
Yeah.
that's another thing. People are out there looking. Well, Bigfoot's not that bad. He's friendly. I'm gonna go out and look for him and stuff. Sure, maybe he is, but that cougar that's up in the tree is not, and
Correct.
you need to be
Correct.
prepared for that as well. So
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
why I tell people know before you go. Before you go to any place, doesn't matter how local it is, do thorough research. Look into the newspapers, see if there's any incidences of animals attacking people or even, other people attacking people in that area. Always know before you go.
Definitely. You talked about the bowl and stuff and the bait, we'll call it, or whatever, but
Mhm.
have you had any other I mean, like there's the Dogman Encounters radio, and there's other places with people report and sighting reports and stuff like that. Have you heard any other stories from any other venues about creatures down there?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I've spoken to people from Tucson and Phoenix that have claimed to see something very similar to what I have seen. So when you talk to all these other people in the same state, you're kind of going, okay, so they're not just here, So yeah, I have spoken to a great number of people here in Arizona. And that kind of makes me feel a little bit better because it, shows me I'm not crazy.
Absolutely. Wow. That's an incredible story. And I know we have so much other stuff that we can talk about, and I gotta have you back and talk more, because
Yes.
we didn't even get into your other encounter that we talked about beforehand and stuff. So
Hmm.
we're coming up on the end of the show here. We got some time left. If you guys have any questions for Ryan, get them in the comments right now. Where can people find you? Do you have a website? Do you have a YouTube? Do you put out your stuff? When are your books coming out? Tell us everything.
Okay, well, I'm hoping to have the books done by the end of this year. It's very intricate and slow moving because I'm trying to be very exact. I don't want to add my own opinions or my own takes on either the Wendigo or the Skinwalker, so I'm taking my time with that. But you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Just look up Ryan Paul Tremblay. No, not the singer, Ryan Paul Tremblay. So you can find me there, but you can see me on different shows too. I'm always guest spotting on different shows. So if you see that I'm on there, stop in the chat and say, hey, Ryan, or ask me a question. I do have a blog in the works, and when that's done, I'll shoot you the link, Barnaby, so you can share it with everybody. But I'm doing a cryptid blog where I'll be talking about, Bigfoot and the different interpretations of Bigfoot, Jersey Devil, Dogman, Chupacabra, all the good stuff. You'll probably see some monster stuff like Godzilla and Ultraman on there because I'm a huge Godzilla freak. So you're going to see a lot of that. But yeah, you can find me all over social media.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool, man. Since you said the magic word there, have you heard any encounters or stories of the Chupacabra down there?
Not in Arizona, no. I mean, somebody told me they saw a canine-like thing and called it a Chupacabra, but I was like, whoa, 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 pump your brakes. That's not a Chupacabra.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very particular about that. I'm one of those cryptozoologists that when someone's like, oh, the Chupacabra I saw was a dog, I just tell them then it's not a Chupacabra because that's not how it was actually described originally. So I'm very particular about that.
I appreciate that. I do a presentation on cryptozoology, and I talk about the chupacabras and the Texas blue dogs.
Oh, there you go.
The Texas blue dog is a species. It exists. It is a brand new species. It technically was a cryptid. Now it's in modern science. It exists. But I firmly 100% do not believe that is what the chupacabras was.
No, because me neither.
If they're talking about these animals that are drinking blood and killing things and saying, well, it was an emaciated mange canine. Well, great. You have one canine that has mange and is looking and doing these things. And now you're saying that the Texas blue dog is a species. Well, not all those dogs are drinking blood. They have regular diets. They have regular behaviors and stuff, and we can pattern that. We can look at it. This is not what that creature was. So
no. I mean, just the old descriptions too was always described as reptilian. Going from reptilian to canine, that's a drastic leap. That's a huge leap. That doesn't make any sense to me. I'm just kind of blown away by that. Like, what?
And it does make sense with the mange and the lack of fur and stuff to say it looks reptilian.
Right.
But again,
to a degree though.
Yeah. You're still talking about an animal that is a one-off. There is one Texas blue dog that has mange that's killing and drinking blood. That is not an entire species. And now you're trying to pin this characteristic on an entire species when that species is known not to do that. So
it goes back to what we said earlier, trying to answer one mystery with another.
Absolutely.
And that's counterproductive. In my opinion, that's so counterproductive that we shouldn't even be thinking along those lines. But that's one man's opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah, my favorite cryptid for anybody that knows me is the Chupacabra, and I'm a big advocate of that. And I got to
that's awesome.
I got to talk with Ken Gerhard several occasions, and he's done a lot of work with the Chupacabras down in Texas and that. And I asked him his opinion on it, and he said, well, it started off as one thing, and now it's basically the boogeyman of Mexico and Central America. So if a picture flies off your wall, well, that was the Chupacabra. If you hear something go bump in the night, how's the Chupacabra? And it's really sad what's happened to that whole legend and stuff. So.
Yeah, that's the same way I feel about the Wendigo and the Skinwalkers. It's like we've deviated so far from what they were supposed to be that it's it's my mission to bring it back, to pull in those reins and be like, no. This is what they're supposed to be. This is how they were viewed, and this is how they were talked about. So let's stick to that.
Absolutely. That's perfect. Look at that segue full circle right back to the beginning.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Awesome. Anybody got any last minute comments in there, questions or anything? Just a thank you. Thank you for sharing your experiences.
Oh, my pleasure, Robin.
Awesome. I believe the Chupacabra is a bird-like cryptid. Ooh, Lee, we're going to have words later.
Yep. We're going to find you in an alley. We're going to corner you in an alley now.
Yep. I know Lee personally. Well, we're going to have words at the next convention.
It's on.
Why is it a bird? Lee, why is it a bird? It is not a bird just because it has wings and stuff. And well, technically, if you want to look at birds and reptiles, there's a link there, but
No,
we're gonna have words, Lee.
You're in trouble, Lee.
All right, we're gonna wrap that up. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough, man. It's been a pleasure.
My
talking with
absolute
you.
pleasure, man.
Awesome. I'm so happy that we got you on here, and it's been
Me
a
too.
great show, man. Very cool.
All right, thank you.
And we're gonna have to have a part C. Lisa's birds and dinosaurs. That's what I just said. There you go. All right. I still don't buy it. Great show. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Robin.
Definitely. I would love to have you back because we got to talk about your opinions on Sasquatch and
Yes.
the other sighting that you mentioned, because I definitely want to hear that as well. So
All right, let's schedule it up then.
Awesome. We will do that.
All right.
All right, man. Thank you again, and I will talk to you later.
All right, you have a great day, man.
You too.
Bye.
All right, guys, that is it for this week's show. We got some great events coming up here. We are going to be in April. Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society is going to be at the Metaphysical and Wellness Fair in Baxter, Minnesota. We are going to be in Rhinelander for the Hodag Heritage Festival, Marinette Menominee Bigfoot Convention in June 1st, and then Chicago Paranormal Convention. They're all at the bottom of the screen there, scrolling right there. Check it out. And they're all on our website on the public events tab of wisconsincaps.com. I'm also going to be at several libraries. All that information is on our website at wisconsincaps.com. Coming up, guys, next week we have Wayne C. Oh, that's not right. Wayne C. I'm going to mess that up. I'm going to put his name right. Wayne Wilson. There we go. Had the C in the wrong spot. C. Wayne Wilson is going to be on next week, and I apologize for messing that up. But very cool. Definitely, guys, let me know what you think of the show. I think you guys all enjoyed our guest today. Ryan was a great guy, and we'll definitely have to have him back and talk all things weird and Bigfoot as well. So, guys, thanks for tuning in, and until next week, I'll see you on the edge.